Cornell, I want to show you how Vice President Harris is working on keeping herself on offense on the issue of immigration. Let me show you this.
But Donald Trump does not want to fix this problem. Be clear about that. He has no interest or desire to actually fix the problem. He talks a big game about border security, but he does not walk the walk. Earlier this year, everybody here knows, earlier this year we had a chance to pass the toughest bipartisan border security bill in decades. But Donald Trump tanked the deal. Because he thought by doing that it would help him win an election. But when I am president, I will sign the bill.
Cornell, there's this real relief that the facts are getting out on this issue. I mean, Donald Trump, when people say Donald Trump has benefited over people's feelings about immigration, Donald Trump has benefited from Donald Trump's lies about immigration. Because when Donald Trump was in charge of immigration for 4 years, he spent more time working on the sadistic points on the top of his black painted wall that were meant to impale and hurt people trying to come to this country. And I wonder, this is obviously something she has to sustain. This is a real voter issue. But she seems to be trying to break down the lies that have been told by Donald Trump for 9 years now.
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is, I would go even further on the border issue, is that the real issue and fear behind the border is the changing face of America. And so a lot of this fear that's being generated around the border, it is a proxy for a conversation about the browning of America and making brown people and others the boogeyman. But I'll let the professor speak more on that because he's more eloquent on it than I am. But that said, I think it is a real smart, because look, this is an issue around the border that Republicans have had a key issue advantage on for over a decade. And the voters most concerned about the border and border security are, in fact, voters who are, in fact, really Republican. You do have moderate voters in the middle who are anxious about the border and certainly anxious about security. But what this does is it gives Democrats opportunity to go on the offense and say that they are playing politics with it and pivot, right? So it is I'm going to do something about the border. We actually had a bill about the border that did all the things that we wanted to do, but you all played politics on it. So I think it's a great opportunity to take what I think is a complete boggle by the Republicans on this issue and how they're losing ground with this issue in the middle parts of America because they're playing politics with it. I think it's a great hit and then pivot.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie, you've been in Vogue, so I'll turn it over to you. I mean, the only thing I would add is that this bipartisan bill, it was bipartisan because President Joe Biden helmed the negotiations, but the stuff in it was stuff that Republicans have wanted to get done since 2004. I mean, it was a lot of Republican stuff.
Yeah, and I want to underline what Cornell just said, so I don't need to say it again about the background politics to the immigration debate. But I think you're absolutely right, and here's where I would urge Vice President Harris to recalibrate her language here, right? So on the one hand, she's right. Donald Trump tanked the immigration bill. But she also has her base. She doesn't want to alienate her base, because some folks in her base were a little bit squeamish about that bill because it was, in fact, the toughest immigration bill that in decades, right? So the idea here is to emphasize we're interested in governing. And what does that mean? What does that entail? It's going to entail some compromises, some things that we might not agree with, but we have to work together in order to address issues that confront everyday ordinary folk. The other side is just interested in power. And that was very clear because even when they got what they wanted, they tanked it because that's all they want is power. So I think it's important as she engages in this kind of triangulation around policy, that she also understands that she can't take for granted, right, those people who are really, really excited about her candidacy. Does that make sense, or do I sound like an abstract professor right here? I don't know.
No. I mean, look, and I think this is some of her skill that Claire is talking about. People underestimate her ability to sort of manage and stay on the right side of a policy nuance without abdicating the political upper hand. And I think sort of my observation, Eddie, is that so far, and 88 days is an eternity in politics, she seems to be threading that needle. What do you think?
Exactly. I think so. I think this is really, really important. You know, folks are going to green screen her, just like they did Obama in 2008. You know, they're going to make him or her, they made him, and they're going to make her what they want her desperately to be. And I think as long as she doesn't disrupt that, she'll be good, just like Obama was good in 2008.
Claire, I want to come to you because I think that what she's done on immigration, get herself on offense on a perceived political liability, is part of what makes everybody exhale, right? It's part of the relief. It was a pivot that Joe Biden, I think, pioneered in the State of the Union address when the Republican senator he'd worked with mouthed, "You're right, that's true." But to see Vice President Harris do it in a political arena and have the crowd roaring for what you know, I think Eddie's point is this is a complicated piece of legislation. Her point is we were for solving the problem and Trump killed it. It is a very sort of specific skill that she's displaying here in these rallies on the issue of immigration.
Well, there's a rule in politics, if you're on defense, you're losing. And she knows that rule, and she's not on defense. She's not even letting herself get on defense when the other side is basically, I mean, this split screen is phenomenal. On one side, you have lying and name calling and dark stuff. Our country is in ruins. Our country is a hellhole. Our country sucks. Isn't everything terrible in our country? Aren't we awful? We are so awful. And by the way, let me think of all the good names I can call the other people. And then the other side is smiles and laughter. And I mean, you see Tim Walz's exuberance. It just spills out of him. You know, like a container cannot hold the exuberance that you feel on the other side. People in America are relieved that someone has the language of optimism, opportunity, aspiration, problem solving. And, you know, we now know, you know, whatever is real is not real if it's not good for Donald Trump. And the more he digs this hole, the more he does this bonkers BS that the crowds are AI. I mean, it's just great. I mean, what do these business people think that have endorsed this guy? I mean, what should the Pentagon be doing with the fact that we're buying satellites from Elon Musk? I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy to me that there are educated people that don't see how desperate and sick Donald Trump really is.